maybe 20, 30 years ago, that Pluto is mass things. So it also ruled mass media. And I watched, okay, when Pluto was in Scorpio, we got the Harry Potter books. I mean, the Star Wars books and Darth Vader and the Dark Lord and so on, the Dark Shadow. Pluto went into Sagittarius and we got the Harry Potter, the magic, Sagittarius. Then Pluto went into Capricorn and I was waiting a year or two wondering what the heck, okay, what's the big thing? I thought maybe it was going to be the golden compass with the manna from heaven kind of thing, but it turned out to be superheroes and superhumans, which of course is a kind of a Capricornian eugenics kind of thing, but it's there. And then I started looking back through history, and when Pluto was in Libra, we got all the relationship, the love stories, and Pluto in Virgo was when Pluto was in Virgo, it wasn't really so much about the movies, it was the beatniks and the bookstores and the things like that. And I said, okay, that fits. Pluto in the Leo generation, when Pluto was in Leo, it was the grand theater, the grand movies, you know, Gone with the Wind, things like this and so on. So Pluto in Aquarius, okay, so what's that going to be? Again, it's going to be some sort of combination of alternate realities, other realities, maybe AI alien interfaces or something that then allow us to trigger or travel or morph, you know. So we're looking at some pretty interesting times on the planet here. So when Pluto went through Capricorn, all right, since 2008, pretty much, all right, everybody's been talking about the government, corporate complexes, the military industrial complex and so on. And I said, okay, wait a minute. What does the word complex mean? Right? And so complex pretty much means that things are intertwined, okay, and interconnected. But if you think about the psychoanalytical definition of complex, all right, here's what it is: inhibited, restrained, inharmonious, leading to abnormal states. Okay, so things get so complex and so intertwined and so out of the ordinary that it leads to abnormal states. If that doesn't apply to what we have now with the government corporate mix of things, I don't know what does. Again, 20, 30 years ago, I was, okay, Pluto going through Capricorn. Is that going to bring down the corporate shield laws? And oh, that would be nice. That would be a wonderful version of Pluto taking the Capricorn structure and burying it out in the backyard, turning it into compost. At that event that Laura was talking about, I talked about, I think I talked about it, or shortly thereafter I talked about it, that I did my forecast for 2020 and I called it the year of the rototiller. Okay, and it was like, hell yeah, you know, that's what we're dealing with. And now that Pluto is at the end of Capricorn and we got all of these corporate contract things where there's no liability, people can die, people can be killed, people can be enslaved and so on, but there's no accountability, no responsibility. To me, that is something that needs to be buried out in the backyard. And keeping my fingers crossed, we still got until what? Almost December of 2024 before Pluto finally gets transitioning back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius. And I'm hoping with the extreme measures that have come down recently, the obvious graft and corruption that we're seeing in our governments around the world, not just in America, that I'm expecting that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus next year is going to bring a very radical kind of, I wouldn't quite say revolution, but I would call it, you know, boycotts, people gathering together in a Plutonian fashion, right, to be able to take this power structure down. So Pluto to me in Aquarius is the rise of the proletariat, the rise of the masses. All right, Pluto in Capricorn Capricorn's the mountaintop, you know, Pluto in the mountain. Pluto, it's the people that are at the tops of our corporate and governmental mountaintops are clinging like mad to power because they know that Pluto can just dissolve the mountain from underneath them. And they're trying very intently to cling. Okay, but once again, in the US, just using astrologers as governmental counselors is somewhat anal retentive, but not in any other country in the world, you know. So here I deal with people in the State Department. They want to know what kind of charts or they start a lawsuit now. In 3 years, when it finally gets in front of the public, what's the public going to be thinking about it? So that's kind of interesting that there are actually people in the federal attorney's office that are willing to look at this kind of stuff. And so I think the Aquarian age is going to help bring some of that into the light, so to speak. With Pluto and Capricorn, here's my definition: tearing down and composting outmoded and outlived systems and sciences. When Pluto is in Capricorn, it shattered the Capricorn boundaries. I mean, even to the point of the stuff about the what is a woman, what is a man, trans this, trans that, I identify with this, I identify, oh my gosh, you know, so those boundaries are being shattered. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the corporate shield laws will get shattered too. Do you want me to continue into the history of Pluto through Aquarius the last few times around? I mean, basically, yeah, okay, so last time, 1777, 1779, all right? It was the Revolutionary War. It was the French Revolution. It was also Peru was breaking away from Spain. The Constitution, first 11 amendments of the Constitution were ratified. Interesting too, the dollar, coinage, and currency was put into effect. Slavery was abolished in the French colonies, but in the American colonies, they passed laws that said the slaves had to go back to their owners. You know, Republicans and the Federalists, their party, the political parties they started. And interestingly enough, Russia conquered Crimea for the first time and founded Odessa. Pluto, 2 times ago, 1532 to 1553, was the final rift between England and Rome. Remember, Pluto is going to be massive societal composting, okay? So the rift between England and Rome was boom, you know, King Henry was doing his thing and killing off wives and stuff like that. The London Exchange was founded, okay, for trading. England created the Navy Board, which is what ended up giving them the power of the seas, okay? And I thought this was interesting. Lunatics asylum at the time were now allowed to be doctor-free. They could be private institutions that didn't have to have a medical doctor running the lunatic asylum. So 3 times ago, 1286 to 1307 was the end of the Crusades. It was the end of the Templars. It was the beginning of the Avignon popes, the split of the 2 popes that lasted for like, what, 70 years. Marco Polo, Robert the Bruce, Dante, they were all doing their thing. And block printing was discovered. So this mass reaffirmation, re-experimentation of societal norms, what is considered the standard, what is considered the societal, what is politically correct at the time. Now, something else I want to talk about, and I use this a lot in my predictions, but especially for predicting for clients and so on, and that is the ingresses, what I call them crossover and crossback periods. All right, I don't really look so much at the actual chart of the ingress, especially for something like Pluto that'll be 3 times or 5 times or whatever. But I look at the period of time that it crosses. In this case, it's crossed over into Aquarius now until June 10th. Then it's going to go back into Capricorn from June 10th until January 20th of next year. And when we cross back, what ends up happening is we are reminded of the things that we should not discard from the Capricorn generation, the things that should be brought forward into the Aquarian age. Remember this, it's not always about forgetting what's going on. And this is a big thing too, when I talk about the idea of the Aquarian age going from one extreme to the other, and then like ringing a bell, and then finally coming to a balance a few generations in. And I call us the Johnny Appleseeds of the Aquarian age. And I've been telling clients for years to train your kids, teach your kids history so that they don't forget what it was like, that they don't just are all present and future motivated. The whole thing about those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. So, but we have crossover, cross back. And in this case, we have 2 cross back periods for Pluto, 2 crossover periods for Pluto into Aquarius. So when I see that, and because of the speed of Pluto, we're now moving into a period where we're going to be getting 5 crossbacks as Pluto moves through the future signs. All right, since what was it, Pluto in Scorpio, Sagittarius, and through there, it was only 3 times because Pluto was moving so fast. All right, but the other thing that I would like to say is that when you have 2 crossbacks and 2 crossovers, there's way more information, there's way more change that's taking place. There's way more composting that takes place. And of course, a crossover is more inventive, more creative, more progressive, and forgetful of the past, okay? The crossbacks are more conservative, more preservative, more about homogeneousness, and about remembering the past. And so we can look at that. We can look at where the Capricorn Aquarius cusp lies in our charts, lies in the famous people's charts, the US chart, and this kind of stuff, by planet and sign and so on. We can get a better idea. But pay attention to the crossover and crossback periods, not just the ingress charts. Okay, so, all right, so Pluto into Aquarius. Okay, Saturn going into Pisces. All right, when Saturn was in Capricorn, way back when now, in 2017, 2020, Trump was doing the trade war things with China. It was the impeachment stuff, impeachment of a president. It's happened before, but Saturn in Capricorn, that makes sense. It was Brexit, right? Migration issues. The US, it was interesting. The US made a policy change at the time when Saturn moved into Capricorn, or I should say when Saturn moved out of Sagittarius. When Saturn was in Sagittarius, the big threat to the US was terrorists. When Saturn moved into Capricorn, the big threat ended up becoming, wasn't the terrorists, it was the great powers. It was Russia, it was China, Iran, things like this. And I just want to point that out. It's going from Sag to Capricorn, okay? Saturn goes into Aquarius. What is it going to be? It's going to be the freedoms, the weirdos, the aliens, the outliers, the round pegs in the square holes. These are going to be the dangerous entities in the world with Saturn in Aquarius. And we got that, right? Saturn in Pisces. I mean, think about it, the societal repressions, right? Saturn in Aquarius, I'd love to sum it up as trust the science, okay? When Saturn was in Aquarius, we got all of the companies racing to be the first ones to the private billionaires to be in space, and it was top-down control, isolation, so on and so forth. But Saturn going into Pisces now, it's like I forget what teacher told me this, but Saturn in Pisces was like trying to contain water, trying to hold water in your hands. Saturn is boundaries and concentration, and Pisces is boundlessness and immersion. You put the two of them together, it's like trying to paddle a boat that's sinking, and it's sinking faster than you can paddle it. And you just kind of stay in one place. And I'm saying that Saturn going into Pisces is going to be not trust the science, but trust the source. Okay, so Saturn in Pisces, and this is going to be spun by the, what would I call them? The dark energies of the planet. All right, this is going to be spun where you have to trust big church, big government, the government sponsored church, not the unique, not the cults, not the this, not the that, not the offshoots, not the changing religions. Okay, and it's going to be, Saturn always starts with fear, right? Whenever you start, that's how I've seen it happen for years and years, especially in people's charts. Transiting Saturn moves, hits a planet or moves into a sign or a house for about 2.5 years, but usually about the first year, depending upon whether you actually have planets in the early part of the sign, right? But that first part, you get this fear, you get the, oh, what if, what happens? Oh, how am I going to protect myself and this and that. But Saturn gives you your just rewards. You don't get major developments in your chart without a good Saturn transit. It's just the kind of thing where you have to put in your dues, pay your dues. I call it sweat equity. You're dealing with some sort of nose to the grindstone issue. So the negative part of Saturn going through Pisces is going to be repression and control of the religious, artistic, and metaphysical realms. Okay, we're going to see this. And so be prepared for it. We're definitely on the line when it comes to being some of the people who are going to need to have to push back on this. And so, and especially once Saturn goes into Aries, it conjuncts Neptune, Saturn in Aries, that's especially with the Neptunian spiritual powers. This is going to be where we, as a society, have to take a stand on an individual level. It's the hero, it's the pioneer. I call them the Lewis and Clarks of the zodiac, is the Aries energy, right? You put Saturn there that's trying to form stuff, and Neptune with his trying to dissolve stuff, and pretty much the only thing left is the individual that has to weave the razor's edge through the middle of that. But again, I'll get to that. There's a book here that I love. It's one of my favorite top 5 books, Astrology, the Divine Science, by Marcia Moore and Mark Douglas. And I love her definition for Saturn and Pisces. And it's physical discipline leads to spiritual grace. Okay, that's the positive side. That's the, you pay your dues, you do your duty, you learn the homework, you take the tests, and you get it's like a practical idealism. Okay, you want to reach the mountaintop, there's certain paths that you have to take. All right, I always call Saturn the just reward, whether it's good or bad. If you screwed people over for the last 15 years, to half the Saturn cycle, you're going to get teared down. If you've treated people the way you wanted to be treated, you usually get a decent reward, And Saturn in Pisces, the negative side is guilt and sorrow and suffering, submission to a divine force, which can be good or bad, depends on who's deciding what the divine force is. But I want to point out that 2 people that had Saturn in Pisces was Thomas Edison and Edgar Cayce. And Edgar Cayce, got to a point where he couldn't learn anything. Angel told him to put the book under his pillow and he would remember everything the next day. That's a Saturn and Pisces flavor of the world, And then with Edison, I love this story. The guy was an inventor, invented massive amount of things, but he would be able to see the wear of his machinery in his head. And when he would get stuck and not know what to do, he would take these 2 large ball bearings, sit in a chair that had arms, hold his hands like this so that the ball bearings were resting, and he'd fall asleep, meditate, or go into a trance or whatever. But when the balls dropped out of his hand and hit the floor, he'd wake up and run over to his notebook and write down what he had been thinking at the time. And it was usually 95% of the time, he says, it was the answer to the thing that he needed to figure out. These are Saturn and Piscean ways of dealing with the universe. And so we're going to see this more. We should accentuate this more in our clients. We should accentuate this more in our governmental structures, you name it. All right. So I'm going pretty fast here because I want to get through stuff and I want to get to some of the charts here. So Uranus and Taurus. So I was talking about that a lot at that event back then, that I just watched how in history, how it has messed with society, but often in a way that we're trying to save somebody, trying to save something. The last time it happened, 1931 to 1942, right? Securities and Exchange Commission was founded, right, to kind of protect the investments and so on. Social Security Act was trying to invest the people. The minimum wage for women was enacted. And we were coming out of the Great Depression. There was the Dust Bowl, food shortages. What was it? The Victory Gardens. I've been saying for years, this Uranus and Taurus, we needed to have vitality gardens, and that you should see how many raised beds and things I have in this house, around my house here, growing food and having the kind of abilities to do that, because I've been watching this ever since. And it was like, okay, we need vitality gardens. So there was a wealth tax last time, by the way, too. The time before that, 1852 to 1858, when Uranus was in Taurus. Remember I talked about the Navy, in the English Navy? Well, it ended up becoming the East India Company, all right? The Navy pretty well just backed up everything in the East India Company. But during Uranus and Taurus 2 times ago, that power was transferred to the Crown of England. And it was kind of interesting too, that all of a sudden now we're having change in the monarchy and so on, but while Uranus is in Taurus. There was a huge financial crisis 2 times ago with Uranus and Taurus in Europe at the time, because of all the speculation going on in investing in railroads in the United States. And it fell apart. All right, Wells Fargo was created, the bank was created. Florence Nightingale was running around setting up hygiene standards and things like that for tangible physical health. So 3 times ago, 1800 to 1808, Uranus and Taurus. Napoleon was doing his thing. US was embargoing France and Britain. The Louisiana Purchase happened, and there's not a whole lot of information there. The US capital moved from Philly to Washington, DC. Right? So now Uranus and Taurus, spring of 2018 until 2025, right? So as I said, the recalls, the supply line disruptions, commodities and luxuries. I even talked at the time, it was like the spring of 2019, Bitcoin had come back down to about 3,000, 3,500. And I said, okay, buy it now and hold it until Uranus gets into Gemini. Just as Uranus gets through the Jupiter, Uranus and Taurus, at the end of 2024, Bitcoin will probably, not CBDC, just Bitcoin, blockchain-based stuff, would probably be about $80,000, I think. But you had to hold on to it. And so I bought one. So we'll see, how things are going. But I suspect. So other things. The GMOs, the RNA, the unintended consequences, okay? Uranus and Taurus is also weather patterns. It was the Dust Bowl, and it's been the extreme changes. Uranus and Taurus, I told people, go buy your earthquake insurance, okay? Because that's sudden shifting in the ground. And ever since 2018, there's been these huge sinkholes opening up in the middle of Mexico City and Florida, here, there, the other. I just watched something on YouTube. It was from about a year ago. Arctic sinkholes, where these giant, huge holes are being blasted out of the tundra because of methane. All right, but there it is. There's Uranus, Taurus kind of stuff. So And of course, Taurus with the banking systems and the crypto and the earth elements, even supermarkets. Uranus and Taurus kind of rule supermarkets, right? One of the things that I was saying was going to happen was organics were going to go through the roof, okay? Because with the Uranus and Taurus, we were going to come up with the technology to perceive, you know, what was in our foods, what was on our foods, and so on. And like I said, they have them, but they haven't quite made them public yet. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that too. Something else that just came up. There's this new thing, Gates funded, something. It's called Appeal, and they can even put it on organic stuff. They don't really have to tell you, but they do label it with the thing that's Appeal, and it's this polysaccharide kind of stuff that is coated around apples and avocados, and organics too, and it's supposed to increase the shelf life by twice as much. But the processes that are used to make this stuff, and you can't wash it off, all right? The processes that are used to make this stuff have all those heavy elements and the mercury and the this and that in it. And so this stuff is coated on our food. So again, Uranus and Taurus, a sudden shift in our ability to have pure, clean, safe, luxurious, clean Taurian food, you know, and so pay attention to that. Start looking at your organic stuff. Look for that Appeal label and tell the grocers you don't want it. That's the only way that they'll stop doing it. So, all right. You know, it was interesting. Uranus and Taurus is in its fall, all right, in Taurus. So it's tangible physical disruptions. And I thought it was interesting when Saturn was square Uranus all through 2021, was that whole Build Back Better stuff from the Biden administration, you know, and okay, you know, Saturn is, oh, let's go back to what it was. Let's renovate. Let's go this. It's over. It's over. That's done. That's not going to be happening. What we're now moving toward is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, which I call it a kind of a leap forward. We're really going to be jumping, I think I'm using this in the right frame of reference, but we're going to be jumping the shark here with the Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus. Now, when Uranus goes into Gemini, okay, if you look at the history of the US, every time we've had Uranus and Gemini, the US has been in some major war, okay? You know, World War II, the Civil War, but every single time Uranus goes into Gemini, we're in some big ass long war. And so we got that coming. A few years ago, I had expected that even with the Pluto return and a few other things, that the Constitution was going to get changed, the boundaries of the US, the different states were going to get changed, and we might even have boots on the ground in the US from other countries by the Saturn Neptune in early 2026, but sometime in 2025 into 2026. And with this, I want to point out, what do they call that? There's like 11 different groundswell movements. Up here where I am in Mount Shasta, they tried to develop the state of Jefferson, where they were going to take the northern part of California and the southern part of Oregon and start another state. Texas is trying to do it. There's 11 different places that have been trying to do it since Uranus went into Taurus, all right? And it's also interesting, 3 major eclipses. We've had one, we're going to have the next 2, where the solar eclipse is cut right through the United States. There was the summer of 2017, where the eclipse shadow split the US in half, right in half, right? And that was Trump and the division and this and that. But the next 2 that are coming up, that are the 1, 2, 3 punch, all right, is the October eclipse coming up, the solar eclipse, that chops off the southwest part of the US, cuts and goes out through Texas, or comes in through Texas. And then there's the solar eclipse in April of 2024 that chops off the East Coast and the Southeast of the US. And you end up with these three shadows from 2017, 2023, and 2024, making almost the sign of the Union Jack going through the United States, but they both intersect. The two that are coming up now in October and April, both intersect in Texas. So I suspect that Texas is going to be the first one that moves to do any sort of secession. That's it, secessionist movements is what I was trying to talk about, right? But Uranus and Gemini, so the wars, that was when the atomic bomb was used, not when it was discovered, but Uranus and Gemini was when it was used. Microwaves were invented, aerosols, first computer software, mobile phones, big, heavy brick-like things that we used to walk around with, right? It was the first fully automated digital computer, right? So this time, Uranus and Gemini, this is probably going to be the first fully AI integrated, non-human, programmable device, robotics, whatever. So I'm suspecting that we're definitely Uranus and Gemini. We've got to change the education system. Right? It's interesting that in the US, the education system was initially developed so that the parents had babysitters, so the parents could go to work and the kids could be babysat. I always thought that was somewhat interesting. 2 times ago, when Uranus was in Gemini, first oil wells, right? First internal combustion engine, speed of light was measured, earth currents and sensation of tones, and the concept of subtle energies was being developed. It was the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, Abraham Lincoln, some fundamental laws on eugenics and biogenetics that were coming into. Dynamite was invented. That's a Uranus for sure. You know, this time, Uranus and Gemini, alternate states of reality for sure. You know, we're talking about the stargates and the transporters and things like that. Fully automated AI, new communication technologies. Okay, and probably be integrated. We won't have to walk around with something strapped to our wrist, but it'll be implanted. Education and transportation. The wars this time are going to involve probably frequency weapons this time. We've been starting to hear about those kind of things. Telepathic psychic pathways, interlinking, transporters, especially atmospheric transmutators. You know how they want to put stuff up in the atmosphere to alter the ozone or this or that and other thing. This is Uranus, off space age kind of stuff. All right, so I'm moving slowly, little by little, into the smaller planets. All right, so Jupiter, what's Jupiter, right? Justice, truth, social relevance, growth, abundance, inspiration, vitality. It's also on the negative side, what I would call the bloviator, all right, or the emperor with no clothes kind of situation. Too big for your britches, too good to be true kind of things. That's all I say. Usually one of the worst things about Jupiter transit is you bite off more than you can chew, you know, and Jupiter and Taurus, people are going to be biting off more than they can chew from an economic standpoint. You know, everybody's going to want to go out and buy this or buy that, or, oh, okay, the interest rates are coming down. You know, the housing prices are going back up, but, you know, after the fall of this year, not until then. But what's going to happen is Jupiter and Taurus, everybody wants the luxuries. Everybody wants the commodities. Everybody wants a piece of the puzzle, or a piece of the pie, I should say. And it's going to, anybody know the Carlos Castaneda books, the concept of a petty tyrant, all right, where you shouldn't be thanking the people that make your life super easy and abundant and so on. You should be thanking the people that make your life hell, because it forces you to have to change. That we usually don't change when things are going great. And it's the petty tyrants are the ones that cause us to mutate, to evolve and change. This is the Uranus and Pluto stuff, you know. But Jupiter has a similar effect. And when we get the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, to me, and hopefully this won't get the video banned or something, but it's like an off with your head kind of situation when it comes to people saying, I'm not getting my share of the pie, you know? And so how do we channel that in a way that that doesn't cause so much pain in the world? And part of it, as far as I've been concerned, was the idea that we needed to go back through a Taurian-based economic system, which is a metal or a coin or some sort of tangible weighted product, okay? Not some sort of fiat currency, not some sort of cryptocurrency, you know, but something, if you want wealth, you need to be able to hold it and touch it, whether it's this land you're sitting on, the silver you have in your hand, whatever. The whole idea when Uranus goes into Gemini, we're going to have the cryptocurrency. We're going to have all of that sort of digitized value, but the value itself is going to be Uranian. It's going to change. We're not going to be able to rely on a standard of weights and measures in a way, or value, you know. So, you know, we have Jupiter in Aries, right? Right now, we've had it off and on for the last few years. Not a few years, last half a year, last year, this part of this year. But, you know, that's like testosterone squared, as far as I'm concerned, Jupiter in Aries. You know, it's the provocations, it's all the saber rattling, it's all the mass shootings that are going on. That's Jupiter and Aries. It's like, remember the governors that they used to put on motors and lawnmowers and things like that so that you couldn't over rev an engine to the point of blowing it out? It's like the world has no governor with Jupiter in Aries. When Jupiter goes into Taurus, we'll slow down, but it's much more of a, remember, Aries is survival. Okay, I got to make sure I stay here on the planet. By the time we get to Taurus, it's like, okay, I'm surviving. You know, I want to enjoy life. You know, let's have some good food and some Snuggies or some, you know, nice Taurian commodities, you know, lay on a lounge and get fed grapes and stuff. This is the Taurian version of it. Jupiter goes into Taurus, people are going to want that. And it's going to push the greed aspect of society to the point where people are going to say, we're done with this. You know, let's change this. There's also a geodetic system in astrology that I wanted to point out. I use this a lot for weather forecasting and things. And it's, if you take the zodiac, you lay it over roughly the equator, line up the Leo Virgo cusp with the Sphinx, and then you look at the sections of the earth, right? Pacific Northwest from San Francisco up is Pisces, all right? It's the only part of the planet that's Pisces. Hawaii is Aquarius and Alaska is Aquarius, but most of the US is Aries. From LA on over to the Mississippi River is Aries. Did I say Aquarius? Aries, all right? The East Coast is Taurus. Tell me that don't fit. The banking centers on the East Coast, the Pacific Northwest and Pisces and Aries and so on. And the demarcation line cuts between LA and San Francisco. San Francisco is the last Piscean city. Los Angeles, the first Aryan city. And there are mystery temples at these, all the way around the planet, at these cusps. I consider Mount Shasta, it's at the final degrees of the zodiac. It's at 28.5 degrees Pisces. Machu Picchu is at the beginning of Aries. And the Snake River Mounds is the Aries Taurus cusp, and on around the planet. And you see these wonderful things, but Jupiter and Pisces going into Aries, I had predicted all the water and the flooding and the stuff that the Pacific Northwest was going to get. It's Jupiter geodetically going across the Pacific Northwest. Now Jupiter started to move into Aries, and what did we end up getting? I was saying, okay, Aries is wind, and so it was tornadoes from LA over. And if anybody's been following the news, the weird ass tornadoes that they've been having down there while Jupiter is in Aries. That's going to continue while Jupiter is in Aries. Jupiter goes into Taurus, we're going to start getting the hurricanes on the East Coast. We're going to start getting earthquakes, movements, monetary, the banks and so on. It's going to be East Coast oriented. So, and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction sits mostly at the eastern shore of South America. All right, it doesn't even hit the US, it's off out in the water, but something else to play with. You'll map that out on a globe and start checking that, and especially watch the Jupiter transits. Oh, and Mars transits are great for triggers for volcanoes and things like this. So, so Jupiter moving from Aries to Taurus, right? Survivability to satiation, impetuosity to impudence is the way I put it. Warrior to the wannabe, from expansion to absorption, self to sensation, effort to rewards, invention to retention. This is the cusp of moving from Aries to Taurus. Jupiter squared, you know, take all of that stuff and bump it up bigger than life. Jupiter and Taurus, Bitcoin's going to go up, the agricultural lands, manufacturing, especially because we're going to end up on a war footing, and they're going to be throwing all this money into hiring everybody back in the wars. It makes me think of the lady during World War II, the Rosie the Riveter, you know, civil personal land rights, speculation, big thing, gambling. Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus, there are going to be some major speculative investments. You think FTX was an issue, or SVB Bank? Wait until the spring of next year. Okay, be ready for this, folks. Jupiter and Uranus extravagance. By the way, Jupiter and Uranus, Jupiter and Taurus conjunct Uranus, major mining stuff, okay? Major earth extractions and discoveries and exhumations, in a way, of wealth. It'd be great to go back on some sort of metal standard for money, but the US can't do that, not without a radical Pluto return. I guess that's happening. Huh? So, all right, so the current Pluto ingress that we're dealing with right now in May, what are we dealing with? We're going to get this huge fixed T-square at the end of this month in about 10, 12 days, right? But it's the opening Jupiter-Pluto square from the time we had the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in 2020. And the opening square, especially between Jupiter and Pluto, has to do with the stuff that was born back at the conjunction. Has it grown into what we want it to be? Or has it mutated and taken over the garden? Or has it become a monster or a miracle? You know, and the Jupiter-Pluto square is where we have to decide, you know, do we pull that as a weed from the garden, or do we now take some new seeds and try and reformulate what didn't work from the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction back in 2020? Both of these are going to be in the mix. The idea that Mars is going to be opposite Pluto, square Jupiter, and so on, and that T-square outlets into Scorpio, and we just had the lunar eclipse at 15 Scorpio. Okay, so I had said, you watch the things that happen around the lunar eclipse, which just happened. All right, those are going to be red lines that cause some major Martian type of energy to take place at the 20th, 17th through the 22nd kind of this year. And then what are they going to do? And they go and they try and what was it? The drone bomb the Moscow. You know, it's like, oh no, you know, please. everybody take some breaths, you know, hold back, you keep this. How do we, again, vent this kind of energy without taking off somebody's head, without pulling somebody's spine out of their body, you know? Pluto in Capricorn, I consider that the mountaintop. People striving to be at the mountaintop. Now that Pluto is at the, you know, crossing back into Capricorn 2 times over the next year and a half, we're going to see people really attempting to cling. We're going to be seeing the downfall and the fall of some major corporate structures. Like I said, I'm still hoping, if I say it 3 times, maybe it'll happen, hoping that the corporate shield laws will come down. All right. But something I want to point out too about Biden and Putin's chart. All right. Biden's got a bunch of planets in Scorpio in the 12th house, but he has Sag rising, like the US, the Sibley chart, the US. Okay. So nobody sees the backroom dangerous stuff of Scorpio in the 12th like that. Mars on the 12th, or this kind of stuff. Putin, on the other hand, has a bunch of Libra planets, but that has Scorpio rising. So it's Scorpio rising, it's easy to make them the devil, make them the, you know, the bad guy. Sagittarius, no, you know, but they both have stelliums in at the end of the 11th into the 12th house. But Putin is the one that has to deal with the Scorpio rising, you know, so, okay. One of the things that I'm looking really forward to, all right, is from November of 2024 until July of 2025. During that 9-month period of time, every single planet in our solar system changes signs. And planet changes signs, it's a change of attitude, okay? So attitude adjustment, if you might say, all right? Pluto is going to make the last time in November of 24, and then by the time we get to July, Neptune's moved into Aries, Saturn's moved into Aries, Jupiter's moved into Cancer, and by July of 2025, Uranus makes its first pass into Gemini. Now, overall, with all the retrogrades, that expands out to about a 3-year period from March of 2023 to April of 2026. But there's that 9-month period where every planet in the solar system changes signs. And this, I think, is wonderful. I really think this is where we can affect the attitude changes that are necessary to cause a change. And I've been calling that 9-month period the grand entrance to the Aquarian age, or the birth of the entrance to the Aquarian age, okay? And that happens shortly after the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So we're pretty much going to blow everything up in the springtime of 2024. And then we give ourselves until the summer of 2025 to try and sift out the wheat from the chaff and come up with some sort of new standard. For, remember, the thing I always have to remind people with astrology is that it takes patience. It's patience. It's, you know, everybody wants this new age to be here now kind of stuff. You know, it just doesn't work that way on this reality. All right. Once we get into Uranus and Gemini and stuff, all things are off. Astrology is going to have to come up with a different way of tracking transits. Okay, but that's for another time. So now the Neptune in Pisces, right? Last time we had Neptune in Pisces is the 1850s, slavery issues, the Dred Scott decision. It was, again, the Crimean War. It was also, that was at the same time that the Uranus was in Gemini and we got the first oil wells. So I think really Neptune and Pisces kind of overrules that, but Uranus was the ability for us to strike and blow a well. And it was in Titusville, Pennsylvania. But use that chart if you want to predict anything having to do with the oil markets. I've done lots of work on the oil markets and what the OPEC is going to do and so on. And years ago, I did this, and I've tried up and down oil prices. Perfect. They use the Titusville chart. Everybody knows that they use the Titusville chart, but the US just doesn't seem to want to take that into consideration. So Neptune in Pisces, Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, emojis, LGBT2, blending of opposites, the share economy that started, share the cars, share this, right? The rise of big pharma, of course, all right? The negative side, you know, Pisces is downers, marijuana, alcohol, opioids, all right? It's not uppers, all right? And it's what has happened, especially since 2012, and the psychic sensitivity that we have blown open in our bodies. Now, many people just don't know how to handle that, and so they want to shut it off. They want some peace and quiet. They don't want to be constantly stimulated by external and internal sources, and so it's why there is so much downer, cocoon kind of energy happening. Saturn, Neptune, by the time Saturn conjuncts Neptune in Pisces, we're not going to have the pharmacy industry is not going to be one pill fits all. All right, it's not going to be we have an opioid for the masses. It's going to be individually engineered individual medicine. You're going to have to compound, like they used to have compounding pharmacies, where you compound the medicine for that individual person. And that's going to make it difficult because it's not going to be available to many people. You know, you pay to play kind of thing. So Uranus going from Pisces to Aries, mutable water to cardinal fire. I mean, that's the other thing I like about this year too. Jupiter's moved out of, Mars moved out of an air sign. It's in Cancer, you know, for the moment. It's going to trigger the T-square when it moves into Leo. But especially Saturn moving from a fixed sign to a mutable sign, and Jupiter moving from a cardinal sign to a fixed sign is kind of nice. To me, that says that we're moving into a more feminine or feminine quality end to the year. As the year progresses, we're going to get out of this testosterone-driven, have to defend everything, have to fight everything, have to pour everything into some hero or some competition. So water extremes, droughts and drenches, Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Aries, it's going to be fire extremes. It's going to be thunder, electromagnetic problem, okay? Neptune in Pisces is the magician. I've talked about that for ages now, about how the magicians are in control. Look over here while I do this, you know. Neptune in Aries is going to be the samurai, okay? So it becomes much more of an individual, much more of a personal reliability, accountability. You don't deaden yourself to the environment. You instigate yourself, you invigorate yourself into the environment. So Neptune in Pisces, non-containment. Neptune in Aries, individuation or containment. The way I phrased it, God must survive in all, is Neptune in Pisces. God must survive in me, Neptune in Aries. All right? Neptune in Pisces, find the zero, okay? Neptune in Aries, find the hero, find the heroine, all right? So, and then Neptune in Aries, Saturn moving into Aries, early 2025, well, in and out through 2025, but the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at what, 1/4 degree of Aries in February, I think, January or February of 2026. Okay? Again, a quote from Marsha Moore, Saturn in Aries, driving a car with the brakes on. All right? I like that. Also, Saturn in Aries is somewhat of a primitive aggression, ruthlessness to quell individuality. I relate it to kind of like the tortoise and the hare story kind of thing, but it's colonization. It's taming the wilds, right? And now the wilds are not going to be off in Borneo somewhere. It's going to be Watts, LA. It's going to be down, the bad parts of the inner cities or things like that. And Saturn in Aries, fortunately, it does give us perseverance. Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries. This is where kind of God says, God helps those who help themselves. Okay, we've given you the whole time Neptune through Pisces. We've let you in on the spiritual part of things. Now Neptune is Aries. Go ahead, go do it. Go be the crusader. I don't mean to use that word in that sense, but go be the samurai. What's that phrase? I think it's a Buddhist phrase. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is co-opting military religious orders are going to come back. Probably the things like the Masons and the things like that. Organizations like that are probably going to be, for a few years, are going to be rebuilt in a way. Saturn is in its fall in Aries. Okay, I liken it to trying to cage a tiger. So, but it's also that Saturn-Neptune conjunction is psychic development, defining the limits of God and the self. And then there's this interesting, I don't know what people call it. I call it the mystic bull. But if you look at the summer of 2026, you got Pluto at 4 degrees of Pisces, Aquarius, Saturn and Neptune at 4 degrees of Aries, Uranus at 4 degrees of Gemini, and Jupiter at 4 degrees of Leo. And it forms this perfect bowl. Okay. And so I'm calling it the mystic bowl, but that's 2026. Something I haven't talked about too is the concept of synodic cycles, right? In 2020, we had this huge shift. We had 3 major cycles move from closing cycles to opening cycles, right? 10 major cycles that we look at, from Jupiter on out to Pluto, all right? We moved from 6 closing cycles to 7 opening cycles, and then in 2022 we went to 8 opening cycles. 2024 we go to 8 opening cycles, but the opening cycles are continuing. By the time we get to the mystic bowl of 2026, we have 9 opening cycles, and only the Saturn-Uranus cycle is a closing cycle. And to me, to have 9 out of 10 of the major outer planetary cycles in their opening growth phase, I'd like to call that the new roaring 20s. All right. So we'll see. But I think as we move into the 2026 and 2027, remember, most of the cycles that hit in 2020, they don't even start to reach their harvest phase until 28 or 2032 or 2036 or 8 or so on. And so the first one is 2027 or 8 when Jupiter opposes Pluto. Until then, it's all the opening squares, it's all the opening phases and the tests of the opening conjunctions, the births that are taking place as these synodic cycles change. Okay, so I mentioned the eclipses. Just Mars, the Mars transit at the moment too. Okay, think about this. Mars was retrograde in Gemini for 7 months. And I like to call that propaganda, It was also investigative journalism. And the the strong arming and the efforts to do it and the efforts to hide it and the efforts to so. But now, and by the way, Mars has been out of bounds for how many months now? For all through all of this winter, kind of. It finally came in bounds with the eclipse on the 5th, May 5th.
Glenn, could you show us some of those charts that you were planning on showing us?
Yeah.
We're now getting closer to 8:20, so that's why I wanted you to show a couple of those.
Yeah.
The mystery bull one, maybe.
Oh, okay. I don't have.
You don't have that one?
Yeah, I didn't do that one as. Oh no, wait. Yes, I did. Here it is.
Okay, good.
Let me share the screen. Everybody see that?
Yeah, we can. Really good.
Okay, so Pluto, 4 degrees. Saturn, Neptune. Well, there's a period when it's earlier where they're both at 4 degrees. But Pluto at 4 degrees, Saturn, Neptune, roughly 4 degrees, Uranus at 4 degrees, and then Jupiter at 4 degrees of Leo. So these are all sextile, all right? And pretty much all of the planets are within the bowl, except for the moon and a little bit of Venus. But if you look at that, that's all sextiles and trines, all right? So lay that over your chart, put that in your chart. Here, let's do this. Okay, here's that mystic bowl laid over the United States chart. All right, so here's the Pluto. It's hitting the south node of the US. Here's the Saturn and Jupiter. It's starting to trigger the Chiron. Here's the Uranus. It's hitting the Uranus. Here's the Jupiter hitting the north node. All right. That's, to me, that's some nice stuff. I'm a little concerned about the Mars again in Gemini, you know, hitting the Mars and Uranus at that time and through there. But Jupiter over the north node, I like that. But can you see the bowl there from that? Okay, well, let me back up and do these a little bit more in order, the way I wanted to do these initially. So here is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, all right, in 2020. Right, if you look at it, this is the exact time of the conjunction for Washington, D.C. All right, so I like to use Washington, D.C. when I'm talking about any of the U.S. transit charts. All right, so what do we end up with? We end up with 0 Taurus, rising, 0 Aquarius, with that Jupiter-Uranus right on the midheaven. Okay, I think that makes it pretty obvious that the Jupiter-Uranus cycle, that roughly business cycle, that new cycle in air signs, is going to be very prominent when it comes to being visible in Washington, D.C. All right, but also with the Taurus rising, it's going to shake up the. This is an emphasis on the financial commodities and agricultural stuff. If you look at something else too here, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets in the 4th quadrant of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction chart. Uranus is activated by house placement. It's the only thing in the 1st quadrant. It's the only thing below the horizon. It's the dispositor for the Saturn, the Jupiter-Saturn. It rules the midheaven. Uranus is a player in this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction chart. All right, 9 planets above, 1 below. All right. Now, look at that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction when it comes to, well, let me move from this. Is there any questions about this chart here? Does anybody see something that they want to point out? Okay. Here's the ingress chart. I will use ingress charts for when a planet just makes one ingress, where there's no crossover, no crossback. All right, so especially with the Jupiter, especially with the Saturn going into Pisces, I have those. All right, but look at this. This is the Jupiter enters Taurus. Look at all the Taurus energy again. All right, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction had Taurus ascendant, an emphasis with Uranus and Taurus. We still have Uranus and Taurus. Okay, we still have this emphasis here. But one of the things that I had pointed out about the Jupiter enters, I wanted to put the US chart.
Could you address one thing on that chart that you just had?
Okay.
And that was I thought there could be another mass shooting with that, because the Mars is opposing Pluto, square to Jupiter. And yes, there is, but this looks like it might be family oriented because it's Mars and Cancer.
Well, it's US, okay, but remember,
Right.
this is, you know, the only way we could get a stronger T-square out of this is if we had Uranus involved in some fashion, okay?
Right,
But,
right.
but where does it outlet? It outlets down here in Scorpio.
This is coming up fairly
Yes.
quickly.
Yes, okay, and Scorpio. How would I put this? How did I put it?
Yeah, be nice to us Scorpios.
Yeah, really. This last lunar eclipse was right on my moon. All of this stuff is triggering everything's, you know, Pluto square, Scorpio, all that stuff. So outletting into Scorpio, what I like to do is I want to put this over the US chart and show where it points out in the US chart. That's how I like to do my predictions. All right, so let me do that. And all right, so with the US chart, the Scorpio outlet is over here in the 12th house. Not a great place to have it, okay? But in this case, the Mars trigger is in the 8th, the outlet is in the 12th, the Pluto is in the 2nd, and Jupiter is in the 5th, right? So 5th, I'm drawing a blank on what I had talked about this. So let me look at my notes here. All right, so one of the things I noticed was the Sun Uranus in the 6th house. Okay, I thought what I've been saying for a while now is one of the next dominoes that's going to fall is going to be the health insurance industry. Insurance, but especially medical insurance. All right, whether it's because of the COVID fallout or because of this or that or other, but this Sun Uranus in through here, all right, and the Pluto and the value system, but in the 12th house, the hospitals, okay, the institutions, the mental issues, development, and the 8th house is the money behind it, the investments. People are going to be pulling out of these things, and we're going to be left with medical insurance that doesn't pay a whole lot.
I'd like to just say something as far as the sun goes here. The star Algol is conjunct at this point.
The 28 degrees.
The 25. Well, it's about 26. Yeah.
Algol.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Algol is the one that's the binary star, right? That has a rotating 1/7 of the time.
It's the evil one.
6 out of 7 times. Yes. But I remember researching this many years ago. There's another, it's a binary star, and there's another star that revolves around Algol And for 1/7 of the period of the revolution around Algol, that star is in front of Algol. And when that happens, it's not evil. And so there is actually a period of time, and there was a recent eclipse that we had last year, I think it was, that was on Algol, all right? And it turned out to be, I had done the research, it turned out to be when that binary planet was in front of Algol, so it didn't end up being anywhere near as evil as it could be. I mean, the
Well,
chances are 6 out of 7 that it can be, all right?
Right,
But
like in
that just-
2022, if you'll look at when Russia started the war, February 24th,
Yeah, that was the,
it was also conjunct the sun at that point, I think.
yeah, and there was a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction happening shortly around then too, within a week.
Yeah,
A week early from the conjunction, you know, so, yes. To me, I remember predicting the stuff about the Ukraine. I have a friend in Ukraine who asked me in February of last year, what did we think? And I looked at the Ukraine chart, which I have, and I said, oh my God, that's a terrible chart. The 1991 chart for Ukraine. And then with Putin's chart, he had Saturn in the 4th and Jupiter going over planets in his 7th and now going into his 8th. And it was like, this is the best Jupiter, I think Uranus conjunction, I could pop it up. But it was like, no, this Ukraine is going to fall apart. It's not going to be the country that we want to think it is going to be. And it's not going to be until roughly 2032 that it actually ends up reformulating itself as an independent nation, not under the rule of the US, not under the rule of the Soviet Russia, not just of an independent nation. The chart has got all these planets in the 8th house. It has a Uranus, Neptune on the ascendant. I think it had Mars in the 12th, Neptune opposite Mars. It's not a great chart for a country. And so the idea of us trying to, you know, I know this goes against a lot of nationalistic fervor, but the US is not going to be able to save Ukraine. It's not. It's and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's coming up is in Putin's 8th. It's in Biden's 6th, I think it is. So it's more his health and service and stuff like that. But for Putin, it's in the deal making, the 8th house and stuff. But that war started with the Mars-Pluto coming into being.
Well, we're getting down to the limit here, so we're going to need just one more chart, and it was asked if we could do the chart of the election date.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And then that's it, because we're already at 8:30.
Okay.
Okay. And because there will
Right,
be
so-
people who want to ask questions.
Right. Okay. So election day, the two things I want to point out about election day. All right. Now I just did a solar house, right? Because what do you do when the polls close? You know, when they close at all different hours. So I just put the sun on the ascendant that day, but look at how the moon is at the early degrees of Capricorn and Mars is at the early degrees of Leo. All right. So with the moon in Capricorn for most of that day, you know, all of that day, really, from sunrise, well, 2 hours before sunrise on, to me, that made me think that people are going to want to, with the election, they're going to want to go back to the old. They want the reminiscence, you know, they don't want to try something totally new, you know, and now for something completely different. The, you know, moon in Capricorn, especially in the 2nd house, we want our old values back. We want our old security, our safety, our foundations, okay? And then wherever Mars falls in the different planets and the different candidates' charts, that's going to be good. Mars going into Leo triggers Trump's ascendant, his Mars on the ascendant. There was a few other planets that, I think it was JFK. I looked at JFK, I looked at Marianne Williamson, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and so on. And honestly, and this has got nothing to do with his policies, but Trump has just got massive transits for that day. Just one, Uranus on the midheaven, Jupiter on his, I forget what it was, but election day. Look at this. Okay, where is it? Here's what, not Klaus Schwab. By the way, that whole agenda 2030 thing, Klaus Schwab, before that hits, Klaus Schwab has his Neptune go over his Saturn. And you tell me somebody who says Neptune over Saturn gets you what you want. Okay. It doesn't. It usually dissolves what you think you want. So anyhow, United States chart, here's the election day chart around that. All right. One of the things I want to point out, Saturn right on the nadir, right? Pluto's still a return. Chiron still making its return. All right. But what's important is the Jupiter is retrograding back and forth. Right. Actually, it doesn't, almost makes it to Mars and then it backs up, but it's backing up in the 7th. And so for me, I felt Jupiter retrograde in the 7th coming off of Mars was going to slow down the war efforts, was going to slow down the push to be globally based, internationally based. It was going to bring the energy further into more nationalistic tendencies, I guess, if I'm using the right word. All right. And then here, Mars is going to trigger the North Node, in the 8th, but affecting the 9th house. And so I kind of like that. I'm a big advocate of the North Node, as being soul food, as being someplace that, it's where we eat, but we can't be eating all the time. We have to digest, we have to move it, we have to, and so we do it in spurts when we're feeling comfortable. So Mars over the North Node in the 8th, that's decent for our treaties. Jupiter in the 7th is also decent for our treaties, our relationships with NATO and other countries and so on. So to me, that says that whoever comes in as president is going to take a somewhat lighter hand and is going to deal more with that Saturn on the nadir, our country, our home, not attempting to what's that phrase? Take care of, I'm paraphrasing it, but deal with your own home first, your own family first, then deal with the outer world. You got to start with the self. You got to start with the country. The idea is Saturn finally off the moon. Saturn over the moon was ridiculous with, the whole lockdowns and everything. But now Saturn's moving into the 4th, and there's going to be this Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the 4th. This is a reinventing of the United States, the housing markets, the foundations that we want to deal with. The Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is going to be in the 6th. That was one of the things that was telling me why the medical insurance and the insurance industry was really going to start to take a crap when it came to the U.S. public. So, questions?
Okay, yeah, let's take questions now from the audience, and right here.
Yes.
Yeah, for him to hear you, you need to come up here.
Anybody inside of chat, please go ahead and put your questions in so we can have you.
Ben, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, earlier you mentioned Jupiter conjunct Uranus back in April 2024. Could you pull up the U.S. chart?
Jupiter conjunct what in the,
Jupiter,
We don't have a
there's
lot
the US chart.
yeah, no,
of questions.
you mentioned Jupiter conjunct Uranus in 2024. In July of 2024, Jupiter will be conjuncting the US Uranus.
Okay.
What's your question?
This, the Jupiter is conjunct Uranus in, I think it's April of 2024.
Right.
Yeah.
What
So
was your
here-
question?
Wanted to comment on that because
Comment on this?
All right. All right, anybody else here have a question?
What was the question? I didn't hear what his
Yeah, I
question.
know, I asked him that, and he said he just wanted you to make a comment about it. The Jupiter
Okay.
Uranus conjunction.
Well, the big thing is that it's in the US 6th house.
Okay,
Right? And so, you know, service, the vets and the animals and the medical industry, our daily lives, our daily routines are really going to be, you know, shaken, not stirred.
you also talked about the organic foods and
Yes.
all of that with that particular aspect. Seems like that would really
Right.
take them to the highest point.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
anyone else here have a question? No one in our group? What about in the chat? I'm gonna go,
Already typed a question for the chat. Nobody has any questions. I do want to know if we're gonna be involved in the war.
he did say that. When Uranus went into Gemini, he already said that.
Every time, what, 4 or 5 times now, so, you know, every time that we've had Uranus and Gemini, we've been
But
in a protracted
You
war.
did say on our soil, which is different than the other ones. so-
That's because of the Pluto return and the Pluto. Yes, and by that time, Pluto is going to be on the south node. So,
Okay. Okay.
Mm.
Well,
And-
unbelievable amount of research. I hope all of you appreciate how much research he had to do all of that. And my head is spinning. And I catch on really quick, but I'm like dumbfounded here at how much energy. Yeah. I mean, you've got enough information here for a seminar. So just to let
Right.
you know, but we're
Yeah.
very thankful that you did all of this work and just kind of very out there.
Yeah,
So
well,
we're really thankful, and if you do put that into a booklet, if you could let us know, because I'm sure some of us would want to purchase that. Because
I
this
have-
research is for the next few years. We're not talking about just now.
right. And this is, I rarely do online stuff. I like to do my stuff in-house.
Yeah,
And-
everybody
yeah.
prefers that, but doesn't work that way anymore. We have another
Yeah.
question here. You have to get up though for him to hear it. You do. Okay. All right, we
So-
have a question.
Hi, moving into the Aquarian age, as we are about to do, and you mentioned artificial intelligence, which we all know is coming. I'd like for you to speculate philosophically and astrologically the pros and cons of what we could expect, at least in the near future, while all of us are still on the planet with AI.
Okay, well, anybody remember the Star Trek episode, The Borg?
Yeah, which one?
Well, just the concept, the Borg, who they were, how the individual is assimilated into this giant mind, you know, that's the negative side, okay, of the artificial intelligence. That's the Terminator kind of stuff, where the machines get smarter than we do, all right? And I think the way it's actually going to end up, philosophically going to end up, is the AI enhanced computers are the things that are going to help us to open up the different portals into the past or the future, or stargates or things like that, but it's going to be the intelligence, non-biological intelligence that end up shifting the reality on us, where we don't get to stay where we want to stay. Worst case scenario is we get sent through the stargates by these intelligences. Right? Best case scenario is obviously sometime over the next 2,000 years, we're going to become aware. What in the age of Aquarius, we're going to become aware of the aliens. We're going to become aware of some other cultures in the world that come to visit us, or vice versa. And it may literally be the things that knits humanity together as a whole. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one other question here, or actually, you want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that I have a book that's published. It's called 10 Key Features of Fame and Fortune. An astrologer's look into the celestial DNA of celebrities.
It's on astrologers.com.
Astrologers, okay. And also is published through American Federation of Astrologers.
Oh, good. The AFA.
Nice.
I wanted to mention about Marcia Moore. I don't know if you knew what happened to her, but I was told by Charles Jane that her husband worked in a hospital and got ketamine and
Yes.
gave it to her, and that they found her in the backyard of their house buried, where the her husband, not that he killed her, but she died of the ketamine use, and he knew that he would be affiliated with that. And this is what Charles told me.
I had heard.
Charles James.
I hadn't heard that she died and got buried, but I had heard that the two of them used to do ketamine to be able to write these kind of books.
Well, she wrote On the Bright Side, and that's all about her ketamine use.
Ah, okay.
Bright Side of Consciousness. So I
Yeah.
just thought you should know what Charles told me. And I thought it was fascinating. Well, we want to thank you again, and it was really nice seeing you. And hopefully you become part of our group on a regular basis. We would love to have you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Glenn. It was very, very good. I enjoyed this.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
One quick thing, Laura,
Yes, yes.
is that I do a monthly, 4,000 word forecast at the
Oh,
beginning of every.
wonderful.
So people can go to MountShastaAstrologer.com and you can find it or sign up for it.
Download it. Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Give
You're
us the
welcome.
site again, MountShastaAstrologer.com,
Yeah, spelled out. Yes.
all spelled out.
Well, even if you just did MT, you'd get there too.
All right. Thank you so much. We
You're
have to
welcome.
get out of here,
Thank
so
you.
we have to shut down on this end. I thank all of you who are on the Zoom world for showing up tonight, and we had a good group here also. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, just a quick question. Do you know what the book is for that celestial book?
Didn't hear it.
What was the book for the celestial astrologers? Somebody wrote a book about celebrities. You know what it was?
That was
on your
someone in
end.
our group.
Go into the chat. It's in there.
That was on your end, the guy.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Ellen
Okay,
Maeda, it's right here, though, right there.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We've got a few authors in here.
Yeah, I never get, I have 10 books started, but I've got so many planets in the third house, I jump to something else already before.
Mhm. All right, thank you. Bye,
Mhm.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Great lecture. Great.
Bye.
Great
Y'all
lecture.
gonna put this one
I
out?
told you guys how good he was.
Y'all gonna put this one out for us to review again?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you. Bye, everyone.